All right, let's let our guest do a clap. Do a clap.
Okay. Well done.
That was a seasoned clapper.
Oh, you can tell, right?
This is not your first class.
That was a great
That's
technique
how we do it in the classroom. That's right.
I tell you,
That's
week in and week out,
way.
we are practicing our claps on this show, and that might have been the best clap we've ever seen.
That's an educator clap.
That's to
right.
get that attention.
That's exactly right.
That's an attention getter.
Yes, that's
Oh
it.
my gosh, I used to have when I was teaching preschool. It's like you have your toolbox of like all the classroom management techniques.
That's right.
And man, sing-songing. I wouldn't even be a song. I'd just be singing about what we're doing next. Boys and girls, we're going outside. And they're just like.
They loved it.
Yeah, they're just.
You can't.
As soon as you start kind of giving that energy.
Captured their attention.
That's right. Well, good claps.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Man, I'm getting deja vu here. Somebody was here last week that looks a little similar. Just a little similar to you.
Wonder who?
I know. So who are you? What do you do here? What's going on?
Well, I am Jacqueline Chavis of Colander Chavis Consulting. It's an educational consulting business. And I am the mom of the person that you said, we kind of deja vu piece here. Yes, that awesome daughter.
Fantastic.
And so I am a lifelong educator, retired.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you.
Educators don't get that enough.
You're
man.
exactly right.
Thank you. My goodness.
The responsibilities have morphed so much since I was in the classroom, which was 29 years and 6 months ago, as of July 19th. August 1st, I should say.
So you were teaching at 15?
How did you know? I was advanced. Yes, 15. That's right.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so I retired last July, the 19th, actually.
Congrats on that. That's great.
And I still had that itch that it was just really something else that I wanted to do, to stay, involved in the work of educating and working with leaders in the area, principal central office leaders, and decided that I was going to step out, leap of faith, and start my consulting business.
Wow.
Working with principals and teacher leaders and central office staff. And now with everything going on with reopening of schools in COVID,
right.
I'm actually working to develop, coordinate services for parents or those virtual pods that are happening out there now, that they can have someone to call in for advice or any consultant work to say, how can we go about, do you know of any special ed teachers who are willing to work? So just really trying to be one that's working with the needs, to be able to stay in tune and be here to provide whatever needs are necessary by way of education.
It's an interesting situation, have you ever experienced in your tenure, anything like what's going on right now? Like people come to consult and it's like, how do you maybe navigate that in such an unprecedented time? We've never really dealt with this, at least not in our lifetime.
You're exactly right. And it is, I've never seen anything like this before. In February, was working, partnering with a principal in the area where I would go in, we would do classroom visits together, do some planning together. In March, we were wondering how is this going to look? And so that became a virtual setup, which was new to all of us.
Yeah.
And I think, because of the newness of it, that there's a way here that we all just need to extend grace, to the families who this is new to them. And to the educators, it's new to us. And so just really working together to make it happen for the kids.
Yeah, we're all learning, man.
Yeah.
We're all learning through all of this.
Yes, unprecedented. I've never heard that word mentioned so much in the last few months. Unprecedented.
Yeah, we've said it a lot.
Yeah.
We've said it a lot.
That's right.
When it's interesting challenges, because it seems like Matt and I discuss it all the time. He has a son, and I have actually 3 kids at home. And, we're always talking about, it's interesting how when COVID started, we pretty much stopped everything as a society, but as we should, and we kind of assessed where we're at. But educationally, at least in Virginia Beach, in the Virginia area, when they talked about opening the schools back up or closing them down, they didn't seem to have like all the answers for like parents as far as like, okay, if you shut the schools down, then what for the parents, and it's kind of like you're left to figure it out on your own. And it's tough because we actually, offline, the 3 of us, when we had our quick call, we talked about how teachers' responsibility have stretched beyond what they really should have been doing to begin with.
That's so true. Yeah, that's true.
Like, I have a real religious background. I have my beliefs, and I discuss it with Matt. I 100% believe that, the church and state divide is important, because it's not the teacher's responsibility to teach my children anything about our faith. I as a person that has real strong rooted faith beliefs, I wouldn't want somebody that I don't necessarily know on a personal level teaching my kid about faith. And that's just an example of how, like, teachers have been put in this position where, like, parents kind of think you're going to raise my kid. It's free daycare the way they kind of have been accustomed to do it. It's like, I have to work, and school is just an incredible beneficial thing where, like, I don't have to worry about my kid for 8 hours while I go work. But it's still important things that as parents we really should be equipped and ready to kind of deal with those things and not throw it on the teachers like, well, who's going to watch my kid? That was never really my responsibility. I teach him when he's with me, and they're kind of in my custody, and I will care for them. But I'm not raising your kid.
That's
like, it's not the responsibility.
It felt that way when I was in early childhood. It broke my heart because I would see these kids, come in at 6:30 in the morning, and they were there till 6:30 at night. And it's just like, man, I mean, they're spending most of their whole entire day with their teachers or daycare providers.
And it's interesting, that you say that, because I was watching a Facebook Live situation with one of our local public schools, and they were just, the superintendent was entertaining questions, sharing that, that he was going to be recommending a virtual opening of schools. And as I listened to some of the questions and saw some of the things in the chat, it was, well, who's going to take care of my child? And, how am I going to be able to do this and that? And it was like, that's really, while we have taken on so many roles as educators, like you said, I think it's really time now that the community steps up. Because it is such a different time. And so churches and local organizations can come together, just as parents are creating these virtual pods to come together and educate their kids. I think it's a great time for community to lean in a little bit more and help be that, additional resource for parents, because the schools, we are a microcosm of the community.
Absolutely.
And so everything that happens outside comes into the school. And then we take on the social worker role, the counseling role, the food role, all of those things.
Role when I was doing it,
Yeah, and I think it's important if you've got the right people standing in front of our kids and working with us, but it's just a lot.
It is a lot.
With this virtual world, teachers who are also parents, maybe even caregivers. And so I'm hearing that, they are getting text messages 8 and 9 o'clock at night and expecting the teacher or the principal to respond right away. But, they may not be able to do that, and they can't.
Yeah, it's
like overwhelming.
You seem to forget. It's like these teachers, talking about the COVID situation reopening.
Right.
I feel like, and maybe this is just my opinion, but it's like the teacher's opinion. And they have lives and their livelihood to worry about too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's a big risk for them to say, yes, I will be there for your children.
Yeah.
And yes, it's their job and they're choosing to do this, but it's unprecedented.
Yeah. And we're learning as we're doing it. I mean, we are literally playing it as it comes up, because we've not seen anything like this before. And that's why I think it's really important that we just kind of really work together and be patient with each other, extend that grace, because we're not going to always get it right the first time on the parent end or the school end. But we're doing, we should all be about what's best for the babies at this. I call them babies, K-12, pre-K-12.
That's right, 12th grader, babies.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, what I'm here to do is really just help parents and educators through that. However, I can help coordinate services or provide training.
Sometimes it's
those
just,
types of things.
Giving knowledge to what's available.
Exactly.
A lot of parents, I feel like, don't really know what they have access to.
That's exactly right.
There are many programs out here locally, and that's really great to hear.
Yeah. There's actually even a virtual 757 Learning Facebook group that's out there, and it's been so heartwarming to see parents in the group saying, I've got a 4th grader, help.
Wow.
And then there are teachers who are stepping up saying, I'm a 4th grade teacher. Inbox me, let me know what you need. So, that community piece, again, with the parents and the educators, but the churches and all these other organizations, it would be great to see them step in to provide
evolve
some
a little bit
care.
and kind of,
That's right.
Well, it's kind of forcing us into something that we should have been doing for a while. Like, we look at it, growing up, we kind of saw technology going this direction anyway. And for the people that didn't believe in remote learning and didn't believe in remote work, you're kind of forced into it now, and you see it does work. So, and it's funny, we look at politically some things, and we're like, we always talk about how there's not enough money in the country, but then this sort of thing happens and we're printing money left and right. So
where's it coming from?
Where is it coming from?
So
that little machine is rolling, isn't it?
That's 24/7 just going.
We can't help this community because there's no money, but here's
no money for
several
schools.
trillion
There's no
dollars.
money for
right.
schools and education. There just
None at
isn't.
all.
But here's,
$3 trillion.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Just for
it's
you.
interesting to see that.
Yeah.
But, go ahead and run that printer and get these kids computers and stuff like that.
That's
Go
exactly
print
right.
some more dollars and
That
do what
is
you have to do
exactly
because
right.
you're able to do it sometimes, right? This is a real key, critical time for us to get the technology in these kids' hands. Nobody should be asking, how's my kid going to connect to these classes? Get them a computer. If you have to get them internet,
Every child,
whatever has to happen, just do it.
Yeah, there are a lot of foundations out here, who want to help the community. That's a great thing to do. Donate some computers from your foundation or, support.
They need them. These kids need them.
And I also think this is a perfect time to re-image education. You talk about the virtual piece. It's been slowly coming on board with education. So now while we have this opportunity, if it's not necessary for me to be in a classroom as a 12th grader 5 days a week, from 7:30 to 2:30, while I can also do more work from home and still get the same impact. Is this the time now to start thinking like that?
It's interesting you say that. It's a great point because I feel like these days, the definition of just literacy in general is now incorporating, you have to be literate with technology.
Exactly.
It's part of literacy now. Like it really isn't just reading and writing anymore.
Right.
It's, are you fluent with technology?
That's exactly right.
And and right now, that's more evident than ever. You got to know. You got to have access.
What a segue for me tomorrow. I've got some technology training going on for teachers.
Really?
And educators, because I understand that the state, Virginia Department of Education, is offering their learning platform called Canvas. You may have heard Google Classroom before.
Okay, yeah, of course.
So they're moving now to offering that to school districts, Canvas.
Okay.
And it's new for many. And so I had some teachers to reach out and say, do you have it? You're going to be offering anything on this new Canvas thing? And so tomorrow at 10 o'clock, registration is still available.
Really? It's an online thing?
It is an online virtual training for anyone who would like to get either an introduction to or a refresher.
To the platform, the Canvas platform.
I have
Very
a
cool.
great technology resource person who's going to step up and provide that training tomorrow.
Wow.
Sounds cool.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
That sounds
You're
very
most
fun.
welcome. We'll put it right down here.
Thank you very
At the
kindly.
bottom of the frame. You can go right there.
www.colanderchavisconsulting.com.
Boom. Very cool. Well, that was going to be my question. It was like, if I'm a parent or like you said, a principal or assistant principal, what does that look like when I contact you? What do you guys talk about on that first meeting? What can they expect?
The first meeting would be, again, people are able to go onto my website or they can reach out and call me, 757-777-5698. And we just kind of have a conversation about what their needs are. And what I would do then, if I'm not the direct provider of that service, I have a team of people certified teachers who've reached out, who I've worked with in the past, who are great people who have stepped up and said, if you have, anyone come to you that needs some academic support, they are available. I would then reach out to them depending on the grade level. I also have certified professional counselors who are available for that social emotional aspect of learning, because this is also, we don't really, I think, realize the impact of all of this on the kids, emotionally and socially,
really,
the isolation piece of it all.
Right.
Most of our child abuse cases are reported from schools. And so with there not being any brick and mortar going on right now, kids actually physically going to school where the counselor or the teachers can notice something
That's
different.
something I never thought of.
That some districts have been very savvy about putting something on their website so kids can reach out. But at a certain age, you don't really know about that.
Well, sure. That's maybe the high school, teenage level.
That's exactly right. Middle and high schoolers would do that. But so I have some professional counselors who are also available and some counselors who are in residence to become licensed professionals. And so we're here to provide that social aspect of if there's been any trauma on the child's part or the adult's part, and recognizing the sources of that and really providing some services to help in that area as well.
It's such a great point. It's like we won't really know the impact of all of this for a long time,
That's
really.
exactly right.
Especially with the younger kids.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, you talked about that isolation. It's as you know, it's so important at those young ages for this interaction, social interaction, just being around kids your age. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like my son, when this all went down for 2 months, it's like my poor 6-year-old, he didn't leave the house, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd go for a walk around the neighborhood,
And
but
you
he
had to
didn't.
be there to-
It was just all adults all the
Yeah.
time. So it's like, you don't think about that.
And it really hurts me right now to see, people are making the decisions that they think are best.
Of course.
But when I go on and I see pictures of kids, their desks with these, plexiglass screens or dividers or plastic in front, and there's no internet. That just hurts for a little kid who wants their huggers.
Yeah.
And need some type of, interaction physically that's appropriate. It really does hurt a little bit to see that.
It's this new normal, man, and it is a little sad sometimes
Yeah.
to see this, and it's going to be very interesting in the coming couple months to really see how our area and around the country, how everybody's dealing, and we hope for the best, right?
Right.
I mean, we do what you can as a family unit. You just try to take care of yourselves and your children as best as possible, and I just hope that the teachers take care of themselves too.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That's
they're
self-care.
provided everything they need to continue to be healthy and great for our kids. It's a crazy time.
It is. I actually just did a webinar yesterday with a counselor and a former educator. Well, she has her own business now out of New Orleans, and she worked in a district that had the highest crime rate, imprisonment rate, and she was able to institute a social emotional learning curriculum. But she talked through that. Of how that went from the parent perspective, the school perspective. But that, again, is an example of how we're morphing into providing whatever services we need, from that standpoint. But when you look at New Orleans, from Katrina to COVID to protests, all those things, and we expect kids to come back and be ready to read, write, and do math.
Right.
But we've got to get the food insecurities and those things taken care of before the kids are ready to do any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's a big impact. It's sad when we think about, Vic is going to go into elementary school.
His first elementary school.
First grade.
And it ain't first grade.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the same.
Yeah, my son, his first kindergarten. My daughter, her first year of high school. And it's a lot of experiences they're not going to have. They're going to be different, right? So, I mean, who knows? It's like I mentioned before, we knew we were kind of going this direction as a society anyway.
Right.
These kids kind of... They don't have the interaction by their own choice that we had.
That's true.
I remember going to a friend's house
different.
A lot of
every
changes.
single weekend. We had even with the video games. We grew up with the video games.
That's right.
But before the internet really changed everything. When
We
you
were
didn't
all
have to go
together.
to a buddy's
That's
house
right.
to go play the
Yeah.
game. You didn't have
Yeah.
to
Go
go
ride my bike through the neighborhood to go
Now
hang out.
you can play at your house. I'm at my house, and we can still communicate.
we
But
still talk.
there's that relationship
Yeah.
piece that's tough.
What is what do you think, just as an observer, some of the main differences you see nowadays than when you started teaching, like just in kids in general?
Kids, I think, know so much more about life than I think I was exposed to. And for some, that can be a little challenging, because if we don't, as the educators and the adults, who they're with more, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, in some cases more than the parents, because the parents may be working 2 jobs.
Yes.
But I really have to say kudos to our teachers and our principals, because these are tough. These are tough decisions to have to make, central office,
Yeah, we
but
talk
they
about
step
that.
up, and again, try to do what's best. But I think the responsibilities seem to be a little bit greater now. Not just from the education standpoint, but from the whole wraparound of all the services and supports. As a former teacher and principal, and central office, deputy superintendent, chief academic officer, I wasn't exposed to some of the things that we're having to deal with now. It has really changed from, the academics are a lot, more challenging.
Of course.
Kids are exposed to, more challenging curriculum early
the
on.
standards are higher now. Yeah.
Standards are high, which is not a bad thing,
No.
because kids will step up.
Sure.
But there's so many things outside of that I think that we're responsible for now that's different.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, because we have this theory where technology kind of made these kids less social, and we look at things that, just thinking crazy, like, we feel like it seems like kids are getting out of their house, like out of their homes later and later, right? Like there used to be, like, for sure in my parents' generation, it was like the idea was at 18 you're out of the house.
Like,
Yeah.
no question.
And it seems like
You're
people
out.
aren't, maybe we don't have like the statistics or something, but just from our point of view, it seems like that generation is not built the same anymore.
Yeah.
Like, now at 18, it's like, no, you're staying home till you're 20, till you're 30. Like,
But they go and they come back.
yeah, and it's
that's another trend.
It's a complex issue, but we wonder if technology has something to do with that too. Like maybe if these kids just that physical interaction lacking, you don't really know how to stomach a loss as much.
Good point.
So I think a lot of times, like, I see my kids talking to other kids, and I go online, and these kids, they talk much more reckless than they would if you were face to face, right? Of
course.
So I think they don't really know how to necessarily deal with, and we don't know, but we just think
just theories.
Right.
I think that part of the issue is as they become disconnected socially, they don't understand how to take a no, how to take a you won't be hired here.
Or even have a conversation like we're having right now.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's
Face to
important.
face, eye contact, and being able to speak.
The number of, I can tell you, this is another change from when I was principal even. The number of teachers that sign the contract, come in, gun-ho ready. The first couple months may not go as well, but Christmas break, they don't come back, and they don't they're not coming back.
Oh, wow.
Are you
They're gone.
serious?
I kid you not.
This is happening.
This happens. Wow. Or spring break, they don't come back. They don't tell you they're not coming back. So it's that whole piece of just the socialization and how to interact. And they'll just go if they feel like and we'll say, some districts will say, you're risking your license. It could be revoked, if you don't abide by your contract. And they say, I'll get another job. So that speaks to, I think, that we have to do a better job from the education standpoint of retaining and seeing what those deep issues are as to why people are not staying.
Right.
But there has to be a sense of accountability and loyalty to, you said you signed a contract.
You got to do your job. You got to do your job.
Yeah. And so that has changed. And so, I just think the interaction and the socialization and the accountability and being able to say no.
Kids. Like those kids, I'm thinking Christmas break. Can you imagine? You're just really getting to know these kids.
Yeah.
And they're starting to form these bonds with these teachers.
Right.
Especially the younger ones.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
that makes me sad.
I know.
I never even thought that would be
There's
even
several
happening.
challenges,
That's
but again,
crazy.
we always step up and make it happen.
Yeah.
Districts do that.
We have to fix the economic side of it also too. I
True.
mean, there's a level of stress for these teachers and responsibility that we touched on that doesn't always match the level of compensation, right? And it's not always
That
about
is
money.
true.
We know
Very
that.
true.
Responsibilities have ballooned. And
So look at the important role teachers play. And I am a sports fan, but
I know what you're saying.
okay, just our priorities sometime, I think.
You don't get a person like that. Like in no other profession do you get a counselor, like you mentioned, a social worker, a caregiver, like all these things,
an instructor
for the price of one salary. You don't get it.
That is such a great way to put.
exist.
Yeah,
It
that's
doesn't
right.
exist.
Yes,
There's no
that
other
is
profession
exactly
that
right.
Usually, when your job description gets, the things get added onto it. Usually, the pay,
other
kind of
duties as
follows.
assigned.
Yeah,
jeez, that's right.
It's like
but that's
the
a
only
good
way
point.
you have to be cold hearted. Like I'm a math teacher, and if the kid comes up and says that problem at home, like no, I'm not talking about it. I teach you 1 + 1. Everything else
That's
be
it.
quiet.
That is it.
We're not discussing
Right.
it. Like
Case closed.
Case
that's
closed.
not
It's
how
not-
the real
it's
world
not-
works.
it's
Like
not how it
there's
works.
teachers staying late and crying with their students
That's
and
right.
going over, that let me help you, let me get you to.
That's so
and
true.
it's just
I mean, you can remember all
I
your
got paid
teachers,
too much, or there's not enough money going around. Again, there's something economically that has to be switched around there.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, even with our principals, when you look at the age of, the current administrators, at any point, they can say, that it's, I'm retiring.
I'm done.
But what is the succession planning for that? How are we prepared for those? When we look at the assistant principals or two teacher leaders who are coming up, are they ready? Right. To move into such an important role. And I say that because that is another thing that I do is to coach principals and assistant principals to help them to be successful. So we work alongside each other.
You've been there.
Yeah, I know. When you sit in that, that sign, the buck stops here, it really is true. So to even go from assistant principal to principal, that first day is like, they didn't tell me about this part.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So what are some of the more common things you're dealing with? Like, as you do the business and you're reaching out to people and people are reaching out to you, what are some of the more common things you deal with?
I think right now it really is helping principals and central office staff, pivot to this whole virtual thing. And really, I've encouraged, even at the back in March, April, the principals that I partnered with, I encouraged them, they knew right when, I would say at least May, I told all of them to survey your staff. and to say right now, if we were told that we were coming back in September based on where we are, the way things are looking right now, what would be their biggest concern? So that they could begin early addressing those things.
Right.
And believe it or not, some of the staff members were just concerned whether or not they would even have a job to come back to.
Wow.
So when you think virtual learning,
Yeah.
if I'm a bus driver,
Wow.
if I work in the cafeteria, if I'm a custodian,
Sure.
Right.
and there is no face-to-face learning, what happens to me?
What does that look like
What
for
does
me?
that look like? Or teacher assistant, what does that look like? And so I know
Substitute teachers, what does that
that's
look
exactly
like?
right. So that's one of the challenges right now that I know some districts are trying to, repurpose positions such that they can, still have some role to play, but that becomes a challenge as well. So working with administrators to get a pulse of what the staff and the families are saying so that they can be on the front end of that to help with some of that.
Do you think the classroom sizes would change? Because you mentioned that, and I wonder, if school districts would try to do something where, you're not meeting physically, so your class can technically be 40 students instead of 20 because it's one person speaking to a camera. Do you think that'll change, or they'll keep the ratio because of just the workload?
I think because of the workload,
Right.
Yeah, and they want to at least try to keep that.
manageable.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Yeah, the class sizes at the high
Somebody
school.
counting dimes might say,
Yeah, but some of the sizes in high school, they're already, in some cases, depending on teacher-student ratio, they may already have 30 kids in the class, 25, 30 kids in the class. So I think that they would still try and keep that manageable. But, I do know that prior to the districts now, most recently saying they're going virtual, they were looking at, I can only have 12 kids in this class. And so they were doing walkthroughs and measuring the spaces throughout the schools to see how many students can we fit.
That we could actually hold.
That we can actually hold to make sure they were abiding by
Right.
CDC
Social distancing
guidelines.
and all of that.
Buses, kids on bus, how many can you fit? Those types of things. So it's a lot that goes into.
I do not envy
these-
the decision makers, man.
That's
we talk
exactly
about
right.
our superintendent. It's like, I read those emails from him, Mr. Spence.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, that's tough. It's got to be so tough
Yeah.
to make these decisions because you're not pleasing everybody.
That's exactly right. There's no way to
it's
be
like
able
politicians.
to do that.
You just you can't please everybody. So
That's exactly right.
I do not envy it. It's,
and again, can't please everyone in a time that there's so many unknowns.
variables. Yes.
So many variables. And so we're not going to always get it right the first time.
We just got to adjust.
But I think there was a lot learned from March till schools closed in June, that a lot of districts are taking that information on what went well, what did not go well. And so they started very early on making some adjustments to help parents understand that we realize, that things didn't go as well as we'd hoped. And here's some things that we're doing differently to address that.
So how do you think the second semester is going to look? Because some of the things we saw were, obviously the first semester is going to be all virtual. And the second one, they were saying that they're going to face a challenge that this is not an on and off switch. We're now looking at if you start bringing kids into school, there's a chance that they won't have transportation because the buses are going to have to be socially distanced, even though we start the second semester. So, have you thought about what that's going to look like? What is your opinion on that? Where do you see it going? Because we're completely lost. We look at that and we're like, what in the world is going to happen? Really?
Yeah.
I really don't think anybody's got answers.
Yeah, that's
really.
exactly right. And again, it's because I think as we look at the state of the virus at that point, right now we see that there's a increase in cases.
Yeah.
And so that led to the decision of going totally virtual now. There are some districts, I think, though, across the country that are doing a hybrid model in face and others. So I think they'll have to wait and see what, at that point, they'll plan for, a plan A and a plan B. But it will look, again, I think, very much like going into making decisions now for schools to open in September, what that would look like.
Yeah.
November,
have to
December,
adjust.
they're going to have to take a look at it again. I think the end of the semester is usually by end of January, 1st of February. So I would think by that Christmas break period, they're again trying to reassess to see how things are going across.
Because they gave the option to keep your kid 100% virtual for the whole year, if I remember right.
Some are doing that, yes.
Yeah,
we'll
Some
see.
are doing that.
Well, I find it very admirable that you spent so much time working with children in the school system and you got out and you're still here helping.
Love it.
And in these crazy times, it's nice to know there's somebody out there that, it's a resource, people. There's a resource right
Yeah.
here for you.
I'm here.
She's here.
Resource.
I really am. And thank you for, this opportunity to share because
course.
I'm a lifelong learner and a lifelong educator. And it's just a heart the work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you guys
It's been
so much.
such a pleasure.
My pleasure.
We do this normal sign off. We say our names and then we'll do something. Ready? I'm Matt.
I'm Tony.
I'm Jackie.
And this is the Tsunami Podcast.
Yes.
All right.
We'll do a COVID
we'll go like this.
Boom.
Awesome.
Boom. How fun.
It was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
Man,
And it sounds like the rain stopped.
look at that. Sunshine.
Wow, that went.
That was great.